Hiya! Welcome to LSB Feasters Radio Channel, where we keep great radio from the past alive. Today, we are going to Boston and the Dean of Talk Radio. I'm talking about Jerry Williams. Jerry spent most of his life on the radio doing talk radio, rabble-rousing, and just pretty much stirring the pot. Jerry came to Boston from WIBG in Philadelphia in the late 1950s to go to work at WMEX. He spent many years there until he got the call to go to Chicago. And he went to WBBM, where he did talk radio for a short period till the station flipped format to all news. He went back to Boston and then spent many years on WBZ. After he left WBZ, he had to deal with a non-compete, so he spent some time in Hartford and Philadelphia, but he came back to Boston and he spent many years on WRKO. Jerry was really good at what he did, and I'm telling you, he did not mind stirring things up one bit. If you haven't heard the Dean of Talk Radio, check him out. It's Jerry Williams on WBZ Boston.
Hello, America, and welcome. It's hour number 3 of the 8 to midnight ride. This is Jerry Williams. In case you just joined us, we've had already 2 hours of it, one an open hour on our new time schedule. Second hour, we met Seymour Simon, alderman from the city of Chicago. During this next hour or two, we're going to meet 3 people and others who are around the studio as well who will have something to say on the matter. First, let me introduce Robert Rimmer, author of Proposition 31. Bob, nice to see you again.
Hi, Jerry. It's been nice to see you.
You want to give your list of credits?
Go ahead.
No, do you want to give your list of credits on other books that you've...
The last time I was on with you, it was about 5 years ago. Girl from Boston and the Rebellion of Yale Merit. Since then, I've written The Herald Experiment, and this last book, which has just came out in the paperbacks, is Proposition 31. And I listened to your earlier announcement in a state of shock, because I am not a wife swapper, and this book does not propose wife swapping. It proposes something else entirely different.
What does it propose?
Actually, what I'm doing with the book is suggesting that in the United States we have a monogamous marriage pattern, and that's just about the only marriage pattern we have. And although we do have a sort of a tandem polygamy in the form of divorce, but I'm suggesting that in this country it is entirely feasible that we could actually have a legal form, other legal forms of marriage. I suggested this earlier in Yale Merit in the form of legal bigamous marriage. And later in the Herald Experiment, I proposed a college where a male and female lived together, unmarried. And during their 4 years in college, go through, change roommates, and develop a deeper understanding of individuals. And I suggested out of the Herald Experiment, or out of the Herald environment, the people might move into a monogamous marriage for a period of 10 years. And then in Proposition 31, I have proposed in the form of a novel. Keep in mind, these are novels. They come replete with bibliographies and references, but there are characters, and it moves through a situation. But the Proposition 31 is a proposal for a marriage form of a maximum of 3 couples. And if you want to change the law in California, in order to do it, if 8% of the registered voters who voted for governor in the last election will sign a petition, you can get a proposition on the ballot. And the Proposition 31 proposes this form of legal marriage, which would be available to
6 people, 3 couples.
Up to 3 couples, after the age of 30, hence the title Proposition 31. Actually, I didn't write the book under the title Proposition 31. I wrote it under a title, The Commitment. And I am much more interested in the larger issue of interpersonal reactions and the involvement of people with each other, the male and female, and the deeper interrelationships that are possible. So that the novels tend to be utopian in the sense that I am predicating forms that the average person will say, my God, monogamy doesn't work. How can group marriage work?
Mm-hmm. Well, what most people are probably saying is not that at all. They're saying it's a good way for you to write dirty books.
No, the books are frank, but I think, on the other hand, you'll find that the sexual descriptions in them are somewhat different than appear in the ordinary novel, since they tend to put sex on a relationship. Well, let me put it another way. I think one of the problems in the society today is the overemphasis on the I aspect of living. And a couple of songs portray this very much, that are very popular or have been popular. One is the song My Way, and the other is I Gotta Be Me. And really the concept of do your own thing is in the same category. And what I'm saying is that in the vast population explosions that we are facing, that the concept that we're going to live by is not I gotta be me, but I've gotta be you. I've got to learn how to think and emote with you and feel with you. Hence the sex descriptions in these books are all in this framework.
You said you were appalled at my reference to wife swapping. What is it all about?
Well, you see, wife swapping...
Why are you appalled at that?
Because what I'm doing in Proposition 31 is really promoting or suggesting an alternate form of marriage, and this is a commitment, whereas wife swapping is simply, in my mind, simply an emotional jolt. In other words, it like alcohol or drugs or one thing or another, it gets nowhere.
All right, Randy Webb is here as well as Bob Rimmer, who wrote The Herald Experiment, a novel, by the way. And other books that I read, the Yale Married book, I liked a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't realize they were all your views coming forth, and now I know that really not novels, but deeply rooted at the bottom of all of this is your philosophy. Randy Webb is a publisher of the Herald Letter. Randy, you want to tell us about that and who you are, first of all?
That's me. The Herald Letter is an offshoot, actually, of the Herald Experiment. Mm-hmm. The book was a very big seller with the college and immediate post-college age group. And a lot of people responded to Bob. And I was one of the people who responded to Bob, just like anybody else. I read the book. The ideas intrigued me. I was fascinated by them. I was excited by the book, charged up. Mm-hmm. And because it seemed to me that here was a case where people weren't playing the same games, the little deceptions,
playing different games.
Maybe different games. Mm-hmm. I think more honest games. They were trying to be themselves, to develop themselves to their fullest potential. And I got in touch with Bob, and over many, many months of occasional conversations, at one point along the line, I conceived an idea of communicating with some of these people. And since my skill happens to tend toward editing and running mailing lists and that kind of thing, I put together what I call a reader participation newsletter. And this goes out now to about 500 people across the country, most of whom who have read the Herald Experiment, others who have been tipped off to it by people who have. Mm-hmm.
Do you live in this area, Randy?
I do.
And you are a publisher, or is that your trade?
No, I work for a living.
So you work for a living. if I asked what you did, would it endanger any of your jobs because of your
it
unusual
might,
thoughts?
But that's not my problem.
Are you
that's
married?
my employer's problem.
Are you married?
Yes, I am married.
Are you group married?
No, I'm not. Someday I might be.
I see. All right. Also with us tonight, besides Bob Rimmer and Randy Webb, is Dick Fairfield, who is a Unitarian minister. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. How does one become a Unitarian minister today? I heard somebody who was so Unitarian, he said, "I am a minister," and that made him a Unitarian minister.
Well,
is that liberal? Is that being too liberal?
That's probably closer to the Universal Life Church, which you probably are familiar with also, which...
Jehovah's Witnesses declare themselves ministers as well.
Sure, right.
And go around...
Well, I had to go through, a little bit of hellfire and brimstone to get to be a Unitarian minister.
Like what?
4 years of theological school. And I spent 2 years here at Crane, at Tufts University in Medford, and then 2 years, which I just graduated from Starr King School for the Ministry in Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And
are you assigned to a church or some activity?
I just finished serving with a church in Santa Rosa, California. I'm here actually finishing up my undergraduate degree, because that's a long story, at Tufts University, and am attending the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, which is being held at Statler Hill in Boston here.
And you're thinking, is this your publication?
Yes, it is.
Modern Utopia.
Modern Utopia.
A Way Out, it's called, and on the cover are several nude women and some nude men. Meaning simply that they have no clothes on, all right?
That's really not true if you look very carefully, but
well,
that's okay.
Yeah, they have no tops on anyway.
Right, yeah.
Sort of a topless...
Topless. Well, actually, that is a picture of Olimpali Ranch in Novato, California.
Yep.
It's a commune there. And the articles in the magazine, as you will notice going through the pages there, are on various communities throughout the country who are of different varieties, including in Europe. As you notice, there's an article on Utopia's Europe. Of course, the word utopia obviously is can be misinterpreted. It's only in a search for a better life, rather than obviously a pie-in-the-sky thing, that there's something there that's perfect. But people are in process, hopefully, of growing and developing.
Now that you've met all three, Bob Rimmer, author of Proposition 31, Randy Webb, who publishes the Herald Letter, and Dick Fairfield, who's a Unitarian minister and publisher of the Modern Utopian. There's some other couples around the studio as well who will have their say during the course of the night here on WBZ Radio as we talk about group marriage. Not wife swapping?
Not wife
You won't take that?
I won't take that.
Okay. Okay, it's not wife swapping, it's group marriage. Am I right?
Right. Actually, it is defined in this book. It's corporate marriage. And what happens is that the couples coming together in this book form a corporation under a subchapter S heading of the Internal Revenue, which is perfectly
Getting
possible
too complicated for me.
No, no, this is possible to do.
Can't we just make the scene and forget it?
No, in other words, this is a form of marriage, and if it were available, obviously, two couples past 30 would engage in it largely because they would be worried about creating an environment for their children.
Lest you make the mistake that Bob is the guru and the rest are followers.
I understand that, right.
There's a lot of disagreement about a lot of the issues with Bob, and the subject of wife swapping is a valid one, but separate in this instance.
All right, I'm going to break for just a moment, and why don't you join me as we go group dining at Bob Lee's Islander at 20 Tyler Street in the heart of Boston's Chinatown. We're going to get a big group barbecued spare rib thing, and you can. There's a drink called a Scorpion Bowl, and they serve it with 8 straws. No kidding. With 8 straws for everybody, and there are rose petals floating around. At one of the great Chinese and Polynesian restaurants in America, at 20 Tyler Street. I say this to Alderman Simon because there isn't a decent Chinese restaurant in that whole Verschluggene city. But in Boston, while you're here, you should eat at Bob Lee's, 20 Tyler Street. It is the greatest, the finest food. You object?
Pretty good. We got some good restaurants.
No, listen, I'll be just like Mayor Daley, not give you a microphone. Seymour is heard regardless, and he's staying around to find out what this thing is, so that if you did this in the city of Chicago, you might be in bad trouble. This whole business in the city of Chicago might be raided right at the moment. Right. Well, listen, do yourself a favor. Get over and do some group dining at 20 Tyler Street for the greatest Chinese, Polynesian, or Mandarin food you've ever tasted. It's the greatest. Now let's return to Bob Rimmer and Randy Webb and Dick Fairfield, the business of maybe you want to enlarge on it. I'll stop the wife-swapping, kidding around. The Unitarian minister, can you, in the so-called Judeo-Christian thought of the time, I mean, most of us are raised on with those sort of moral standards. This business of 3 or 4 couples marrying, or 2 or 3, one couple is the thing. And as a minister of the gospel, whatever the gospel happens to be in your terms,
right,
how can you possibly join any such movement?
Well, first of all, the Unitarian movement is dedicated to people finding their own way, search for truth, and search for your own way of living, whatever it might be. Now, I might not agree with the way you live, but nevertheless, you've got the right to do that, as long as it doesn't infringe upon me or hurt me. Yeah. And I think the main reason why I'm interested in this thing is that I'm interested in all forms of alternative lifestyle.
Are you interested in, or do you approve of it?
I approve and am interested.
Yeah,
right.
I'm interested. I don't know whether I approve.
Well, I approve because I think if people are searching and working towards finding more beautiful relationships with one another, and they're the only ones that are going to decide that, I can't look on the outside and say, okay, you must not have a good relationship because there's 3 of you there. that's their business. And if they say they've got a good relationship, I may have my own personal opinion about that, but I'm certainly approving of their relationship if they feel it's okay.
I'm in essential agreement with that, but I guess we each go our own way in some ways. You cite the Judeo-Christian heritage. If you remember your Old Testament, the patriarchs often had more than one wife. Seemed to work for them. It's not necessarily the system that I would say would work for me.
You mean man having more than one wife?
That's
now there's a system.
Right, sure.
Now there's a system. A man having 3 or 4 wives. Now that's something else again.
Yeah, I did that
We're not
too,
talking about group marriage.
We have what is known as the women's liberation movement in this country, and it's rather militant, and we wouldn't want to upset them too much, so we have to be for both sides.
Well, now listen, I think that in these things, there's been a really breakout in communications in terms of marriage and sex, generally speaking, but that women's liberation movement is absolutely insane. I mean, those people are insane.
Okay, incidentally, in the Judeo-Christian heritage in the 19th century, there was a community known as the Oneida community, which based its group marriage, they called it complex marriage, practices on the Bible. And in the next issue of the Modern Utopian, I'll put that plug in, there will be the propositions of that community published, which are based on texts from the Bible. Obviously, anybody can quote scriptures, but they did, and they believed in it very seriously, and worked very successfully for over 40 years.
Yeah, speaking about this, this sort of movement is now becoming a movement, I suppose, Bob, is it not? A movement of some kind?
What?
This business of
group marriage?
Right.
Well, I wouldn't say so. I think that there are people, that there are quite a few people in this country that probably are involved in some form of this type of.
Well, does it take on political
marriage.
ramifications like that women's liberation movement? First of all, you say, well, I'd be interested in talking about women being liberated from men and so forth. And pretty soon you find out that they're really commies down at the bottom of it, and they have a Marxist, Leninist thing and tradition. And I mean, it's not only that, but they're dirty. And honest.
What's dirty?
Who's dirty?
What's dirty?
Some of the people involved, not in the semblance of cleanliness. I mean that I'm not talking about people who have unusual styles of hair or unusual dress. That's not it, because that kind of freedom I'm for. But freedom to be smelly. I mean, I think and cruddy. It's not smelly. It's cruddy. Is what annoys me.
I really don't see too many people like that around.
Well,
personally.
I'll be happy to show them to you. Anytime you want to go, I'll be happy to show you some of the leaders of that particular movement whose clothes haven't been changed in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, I've been in close contact with a lot of these people, and I don't think we should get off the subject of marriage. I don't think that you're accurate there.
Well, I think I am. But nevertheless, what I'm trying to say, does this movement of group marriage take on political ramifications? Does it then move into this sort of Marxist, Leninist tradition? And it says something about the imperialist warmongers being the United States and the
in the vernacular, that's another bag entirely.
Are you sure?
It really is.
A lot of the people, in fact, I would say most of the people who receive my newsletter would tend to agree on a few salient facts. They were for McCarthy. Then that's not out of the mainstream of American politics.
No, I think it's.
They're for abortion repeal or reform.
Yeah.
They support these kinds of things.
Yeah, but does it have a way out of our dilemma in Vietnam? Is there some ideologue involved here?
You'll find people who are in favor of group marriage, of some forms of group marriage. Even this word is very hard to define, but who actually are for the war in Vietnam. I think it's. Well, my personal opinion is I don't like people who are for the war in Vietnam. I like the people, but I don't like their viewpoint.
I'm merely trying to find out whether or not.
But there's so many varieties of people. So many varieties of people in this kind of thing.
Because the women's liberation thing took that on. I wanted to talk about the women's liberation.
Well, that was my mistake.
All of a sudden, I found out they really wanted to talk about politics, and their politics were Marxist and Leninist. And I don't care if it is or not.
I shouldn't have even mentioned women's liberation. I would just came from a Unitarian General Assembly where there is a caucus that is of this nature, so a small minority group.
All right. Now, beyond the business of, do you simply want to be free? Let me see if I understand this.
Let me tell you what I'm proposing, Jerry, and what I am pushing in both Herald and in Proposition 31 is for a wider appreciation of a deep force that's moving in the society today, and this may be exemplified by what is known as the third force psychologists. These are not behaviorists, they're not Freudian psychologists, and I'll give you a few names, and a name like Erich Fromm, Abraham Maslow, Carl Rogers. These people are writing on the healthy human being. How can we create a society where a man has a fully self-actualized, full existence, where he has a sense of identity and belongingness in life? And so in the process of these novels, what I'm trying to do is create structures that give him this kind of identity. So I think it is possible. I think, for instance, in an economic and in a technological society like we have today, that corporate marriage or group marriage is inevitably will happen. In other words, you're sitting with a man that in the year 2000 they will still be reading this book as a germinal book. They may be laughing a little bit at the type of society that existed 30 years previously, but many people will be living this way. And this is why I say this will happen. If you take this country now, when I was in college, the population was about 150 million people. It's now 210 million, and by the turn of the century it's going to be close to 300 million. And I say that this vast population, this congestion of people is going to produce entirely new forms and new ways that we have to live in order to survive. For instance, right now what's going on is a system of development where we have age spans, age groups. We have the young age group and we have what we call a generation gaps. We have monogamous nuclear type families where the children move into their own little nests and create more nests, and then take the older people and put them away in senior citizen centers and nursing homes very quickly. And what I'm proposing, as you'll see in this illustration in Proposition 31, is the possibility of, in a group marriage, of creating a 2-generation or a 3-generation home. And in the process of this, do the most important thing in this society is create identity for the children growing in it. Now, sex is an aspect of it. Obviously, there would be sexual sharing, but the family is the key aspect.
Randy?
The goal is fine. I don't think that's the means, and this is, I think, where Bob and I have our sharpest disagreement. I don't think that the idea is tied to architecture or is tied to a structure or a certain number of structures. Basically, I think that the options should be open and that there should be a variety, that a human being who decides, I want to marry 20 other people and form a community, that's one option. The man who says, I want to be a celibate, that's another option. Whatever is appropriate to that individual's development. And the idea of a structure where you go to a school which teaches you to be sexually liberated, and then you go out into society and get married for 10 years or 8 years, and then when you're 31 you're allowed to form a group marriage. I think it's not necessary. The whole idea behind, I think, Maslow's psychology is that the human being who becomes fully self-actualized doesn't need the structures.
Right.
I think the children do. See, that's where I differ with you. I think that you've got to create an environment. In other words, if you don't have structure, then the children don't know where they are for 18 years of their life. For instance, I think I was out in San Francisco a little while ago, and the divorce rate there now is almost close to 100%. In other words, everybody who gets married gets divorced. And in the process, a new form of marriage is really evolving, and this is where the wife carries the children from one marriage to another. And, all right, people want to be married. The problem is that they don't know how to be married. They don't know how to interrelate interpersonally, and this is the real problem.
Well, now,
but the children in this process get in a mess.
I have to interrupt for a minute, and let me re-identify who is here tonight on our first of the 4-hour sessions. We're here nightly, as you know now, from 8 to midnight. Randy Webb, publisher of the Herald Letter, Robert Rimmer, author of Proposition 31, and Dick Fairfield, who's a Unitarian minister and publisher of The Modern Utopian. They all like the idea of group marriage or corporate marriage, and if you'd like to challenge them, we'll be taking calls shortly at 254-5678. That's 254-5678. We're all being heard on the Spirit of New England. WBZ and WBZ FM, Group W Westinghouse Broadcasting in Boston.
A perfect, beautiful day. When was the last time you had one? The kind of day when you find exactly the right kind of job, paying the best salary around. Tomorrow, many of these jobs will be filled, and that means that today is the time to start looking for them. In the Help Wanted section of the Herald Traveler. This year alone, the Herald Traveler will be offering 80,000 jobs. That's a figure we couldn't always quote, but this year our Help Wanted section is nice and fat. And every conceivable type of work is listed, from full-time to part-time, from beginning clerk typist jobs all the way to top engineering positions. And the Herald Traveler has listed them alphabetically to make finding what's right for you as easy for you to find as possible. So if you want to start moving in your career, let the Herald Traveler give you a boost. Check our Help Wanted section at the start of what looks like a great day. And 10 to 1, it'll turn out that way. The Herald Traveler, a great place to find things in.
All right, now at 10:31, Robert Rimmer's here. Who are these folks in the studio, Bob? Maybe
Randy knows them.
Randy, who are they?
I think we can let them,
Well, I mean,
name
what
themselves.
are they? What are they in terms of the program? Anyway, that's what I mean.
Okay.
I don't mean for you to identify them, but what is their meaning
One of the
tonight?
couples is part of a group marriage.
One of the couples is part of a group marriage here in this area.
In this area, yes.
all right.
Yeah, general area. And
Is that legal? Is it legal?
No, of course it's not legal.
It's not
I mean,
legal,
there is
right?
no structure at all for it.
It's
In other words,
aiding and abetting crime.
if two couples want to live together, they can live together, I suppose. I
they
don't
live-
know if there is
yeah.
any law against it. I would imagine that you could probably dig up a law against it.
Yeah,
in
I'm not
Massachusetts.
looking. I'm just trying to find out what their status is. Are they legally married, or is it a living together proposition?
we have a lawyer here also. Carolyn's a lawyer, and maybe she can give us a legal opinion.
Okay, well-
and I think Seth could give us a medical opinion about it.
Okay.
Since he's a doctor.
He's an MD.
Okay.
Well, as a lawyer, I don't know the
What is your first name? Just your name.
Carolyn
And
Peck.
You are a lawyer?
Yeah, I'm an attorney. I don't know anything about them personally, but as you know, marriages in the United States just take place between one man and one woman, and it would be bigamous if they got married to a second person without terminating the first relationship.
Sure. Yeah.
And as for living together, there are many laws in Cambridge that don't allow, that limit the number of unrelated people that can live in the same house.
Well, there are a lot of funny things that go on in Cambridge.
Yeah. So you run
I'm only
afoul
kidding.
of the law in a lot of ways, and
Right.
of course
Okay.
there are also laws against adultery, which is
I'm only
common
trying to find out
knowledge.
what the status is, not to argue it, but just to find
Right.
out what it is. And you are part of a group marriage.
No, I am not. I'm an attorney. I have lived in communes. I'm interested, had read the Herald experiment and was stimulated by that, and I'm interested in forming a commune, hopefully to begin this September.
Yeah. What does a commune mean before a lot of people get uptight about that?
Well, to me it means, at the best, that the people that I have loved, when I have loved people, I've wanted to live with them. It's important to me to integrate the important strands of my existence, which include my creative life, my working life, and the people I love. And I can't love people who live in different parts of town well, or in different cities, so I want to live with them. And it includes, I hope it will include, increasingly, I think I come from a society which basically says I, as a woman, I'm going to turn to men to love, and I find that's a restriction. I hope to break down that barrier, too, that I can find that I can love women equally and have very fulfilling, meaningful relationships with them that include sexual exploration and expression, which I think is a very important human expression, and one of the ones that breaks down some of the barriers and fears between people.
Do you actually practice law?
I did, and I can again. I practiced up until April in Syracuse, New York.
What stopped you from practicing?
Well, nothing stopped me. I just decided that I wanted to drop out, and I thought that I could live more fully in a lot of other ways that law was limiting, as well as when I went through law school, it was a good thing for me to do at the time, but now there's other things I want to do.
All right, fine. Now the other gentleman, you're a doctor?
That's correct. My name is Seth Maney. I'm a licensed practitioner in the state of Massachusetts, and this may revoke it. I'd like to offer an opinion.
Why is that? Why would it revoke it?
Oh, there is a Morals and Ethics Committee. I'd like to suggest that there is no medical contraindication to group marriage. That is, one can think of no reason why people couldn't be married in a group.